Demography is the study of human populations, their size, composition, distribution across spaces, as well as the processes through which populations change. The effect of changes in population on language evolution are not easy to predict. It is because the demographic changes affect different languages differently. In this lecture, we'll talk about the way these changes in population are affecting the English language. The recent change that we have witnessed in population as well as the recent change that we've witnessed in social, political and economic spheres are all due to these changes in population, the changes in different demographic trends. The effect of population increase on developed and developing countries is very different. In developing countries, the trend is towards population growth, and therefore the developing countries mostly comprise younger population, whereas the trend in developed countries is that of slowing down of the population growth, and therefore they comprise an aging population. The 18th century was a time of great changes. Many significant changes appeared in the world in the 18th century, and one of the most noticeable change was the increase in population. Moreover, the cities in Europe also expanded around that time. This expansion of cities in Europe was because of different reasons. One was the agrarian revolution, that is the revolution which has taken place in the field of agriculture and farming. The other was industrial revolution. Because of the industrial revolution, the increasing industrialization of the cities in Europe, new employment opportunities were being created, and therefore the cities were expanding. And also the improved healthcare. Because of the improved healthcare, there was a decrease in mortality. So lots of people were moving to cities in Europe, and the cities were expanding, which means there was very rapid urbanization taking place in Europe in those days. If we look at this diagram, this graph tells us about population of the world in different periods, and also the rate of growth of population. So in the 18th century, the population of the world, the beginning of the 18th century, the world population was something like 400 million, 4 to 500 million. And the rate of growth of the population was barely 0.4%. However, the current population of the world stands somewhere between 7.6 billion people, and the rate of growth is also something like 1% to 1.2%. And the projected growth rate suggests that the population of the world by 2080 will be something like 10 billion, and around that time the population may become stabilized. That is, there will not be a lot of growth or decline around that time. The demographic challenges which are faced by the developing and the developed countries are very different. As I just said, that in the developed countries, the trend is towards slowing down the population growth. And because of this slowing down of the population growth, there is a large number of aging population. And since the younger people are fewer in number, there are lots of issues linked with this particular demographic trend. That is the unavailability of skilled workers, lack of service providers for the elderly, the issues of pension for a large number of retired personnel, etc. Whereas in the developing countries, where the trend is of increased population growth, the biggest challenge is that the resources are not enough to meet the needs of this increasing population. The reason perhaps because these different trends are one, the as countries become more and more urbanized, like the developed countries are mostly urbanized, people think of children as more of a liability than a blessing, because then they have to, of course, provide them with a particular, a certain kind of lifestyle, which is very expensive. If you take Pakistan's example, I often joke that the biggest population birth control incentive for Pakistanis, the middle class urbanized Pakistanis, is the school fee. Because the school fee is so high, it is not possible for the parents to provide a very high quality education to a large number of children. Therefore, families are often restricted to one or two children these days. Whereas in agricultural societies, as many developing countries, in many developing countries, majority of the population comprises rural areas. Children are considered an advantage. If you have more hands to work, you'll be able to probably get more work done, and there'll be more earning hands, etc. So because of these very different lifestyles and different points of view, we see this change, this imbalance in the population growth between developed and developing countries. However, as we have just discussed and also looked at the previous graph, that there's a possibility, the projected growth rate suggests that there will be a stabilization in the population around 2080. This change in the world population that we are witnessing these days, this increase in the world population, it is also suggested that one should not look at it as a population explosion or some such thing, but it should be looked at as a transitional period, a transition from a population of 500 million to a transition of 10 billion people in the world. And because of this transition, we should also be ready for the political, social, economic, and also linguistic changes which are likely to occur in the world. So because of this changing trends in population, the linguistic profile of the world is also likely to change.